next week we could even bring back the gaming.
Right? Just come full circle.
Come full circle. Like, hey, well,
Yeah,
it's been
yeah.
a year since we had our first gaming episode. You guys still playing games?
What is going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning in again to Real Talk by Our Stories, Your Legacy. And we are back again with another Fire Round episode. And again, just to remind you guys, we've been doing these weekly episodes that are varying in topics. Basically, each Fire Round episode is just a discussion about any hot or trending topic of the week, or just something that we just happen to be inspired by and we want to discuss and share our thoughts and opinions and our feelings about it. So, in today's episode is a little special one. We could bring out the birthday cake for it, but it is, as of this recording of when we post this and when you guys hear this, this is about at least here in the United States, a 1-year anniversary of the COVID-19 pandemic that began around the same time. End of March, early April, the year 2020. And it's crazy because, most governments at the time had issued a lockdown hoping to dissipate the spread of the virus. And the lockdown typically around this time was issued for most states for like a 2-week lockdown period. And, all of us, including government and health officials, was assuming that this is something that's going to dissipate and gets squashed out in that 2-week period. Long and behold, here we are again. It is a whole 1 year later since all this started, and we are pretty much still in a pandemic period. Vaccines are starting to roll out worldwide. However, we still in restrictions. We still have a fearful, or a careful mindset that, we can still spread it. We can still impact others. And so it has definitely created a new cultural norm, of our lives. Y'all know what we're talking about. It's different now when you have to go out in public and go to the groceries even. It's a culture that's different in the United States. For Americans, it's, wearing masks is the norm now, and washing your hands and staying clean is a lot more of the norm now. Hopefully, I think that's what most of us are doing. And so here we get. So that's today's topic. And so we're going to jump right into it and talk about kind of our thoughts and feelings on the subject and what we think about life so far. So hang tight. And as always, before we jump into our topic, we're going to do a quick check-in around the room and see who's joining us today. Looks like it's just you and I again, Tyler. It's just us two. As always, it's always good to bounce ideas off each other. So I always appreciate a solid conversation with you. How's your day going today? Or how's your day going so far?
Yeah, no, it's going well. Just another day, it's kind of a weird one in a sense of wasn't as busy today with like busy work. This week, at least for, higher education, if you're on a quarter system, it's spring break. So my work has kind of slowed down in that regard when it comes to like dealing with just internal folks. So I'm in a 3-day conference, so it's mostly just sitting through sessions and stuff. So it was tiring in a different way where I wasn't doing much except watching videos and talking to people after the videos. So a little different than what work's been lately. Then also just coming off of like a very lazy weekend, just because, Allie got her wisdom teeth pulled out on Friday. So there's a lot of tending to kind of her needs and stuff. So that, it was very just kind of laid back, chill kind of thing. We didn't really do too much, couldn't really do too much just because, situations and stuff. Also did not help that I actually like tweaked my back.
Oh, man.
On Wednesday last week.
Yeah.
And it was weird because I went to the chiropractor and everything. And just because, typically I'm one of those people that like, I don't take medicine. unless I absolutely need to. I don't go see the doctor unless I actually think I need to. Um, so Wednesday when it happened, it was like Wednesday evening. I kind of just slipped and I just caught myself, and it was kind of just one of those things where you kind of just like, mid slip, you catch yourself, but then you're like, I tweaked something. Um, but then Wednesday night was a little rough trying to sleep. And then Thursday, I had noticed it was in pain a little bit. And then, like, when I had gone to the bathroom and I was just looking at myself in the mirror, I was like, something's off. And, like, literally, like, if these were my hips in this straight line, for you who are watching the video, my upper body was like this.
Oh, geez.
Like, it was like offset, like a pretty good margin. And I was like, oh, all right. I should probably go to the chiropractor.
Yeah, I was gonna
Uh,
say.
so yeah, so it was one of those things. I was like, I didn't really realize it until I saw myself in the mirror, and I was like, oh, okay then. So I had to go in to get an emergency appointment with the chiropractor
Yeah.
on Friday. Ironically, right after she got her teeth pulled out, so it was kind of bad timing in that regard. So kind of got
No,
straightened
man.
out, everything over the weekend. So also another reason why this was kind of an easy weekend. Um, so yeah, so that's kind of how I'm feeling. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Well, man, I'm glad you're feeling better, and I hope Allie feels better too. And so, yeah, yeah. I mean, like I like to say, and I think we like to both think of, with everything, when a lot of bad things happen, all you can look up to is look up. All you can look forward to is up. So here's to a better week.
for sure,
Yeah.
one of those things. One of the big takeaways from like our keynote speaker, even today in our conference, was just like living in chaos kind of thing.
Mhm.
Her and I've heard this term plenty of times before, but her takeaway for everyone at the conference, which a lot of people were like, "Oh, I love that," was embrace the suck, because it was like it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
pretty much it's just one of those things. Like, what else are you gonna do?
All right.
Things are gonna be sucky sometimes, but you just got to embrace it and get through it.
Right,
So
right.
that's not only has that described the last year, but definitely this weekend it was kind of like, oh, well, we just gotta go through it. Just gotta get through the motions of it.
All right. Yeah, man. I mean, overall today for me, it wasn't too bad of a deal. It was a lot more productive. Felt pretty energized for a Monday. So um, hopefully this is my lowest point, because I too want to only look up from here. But I say that because I don't want this to be the highest point of the week and then I come crashing down. So, but overall, for Monday. And again, as a reminder for our new listeners, we always record earlier in the week, and we post this every Sunday. So we appreciate you guys listening and subbing, and we'll continue to get better from this. So appreciate you guys. Let's jump in. All right. Well, here we are, a 1 year anniversary to the COVID-19 pandemic that began around pretty much the same time last year, around March 2020. And so, as a reminder from the intro, it seemed like a lot of government and health officials, a lot of states, especially here in the United States, issued a lockdown order that, we all thought was going to last two, realistically 3 weeks at most, month at most, to stamp this out and go on. And for a multitude of reasons, various reasons, that I won't point specific fingers at, but um, a year later, we're still in the pandemic. As of now, as of March 2021, as we are recording this, talking about this now, vaccines are starting to roll out worldwide, but there's still a slow rollout, and apparently there's news about a different strain of COVID has evolved, and whatever we hear in the news. But overall, the meat of our discussion today is, what are our thoughts of life so far, especially now that we thought COVID was going to be done and gone. The COVID-19 pandemic was going to be done and gone, back in April of 2020. or even May, springtime 2020. And here we are a whole year later, still in it. And, doesn't seem like anything is, even if with the vaccines and COVID being stamped out, it feels like there is no end in sight, meaning like everything that we remembered pre-pandemic last March 2020 of if we consider that our normal life, it doesn't feel like we're getting back to that. So let's just jump into the conversation, Tyler. I'm gonna leave it open for both of us, for you to start. What are your reactions?
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like a surreal feeling, honestly. It's just kind of one of those things. I feel like I'm still in March of last year, honestly. Um, March 23rd of 2020 is when at least our state announced that we are going into that 2-week lockdown, um, stay at home order, just because obviously, we saw all the news in Italy and in the European countries, like they were closing things down, going into shutdown, like citywide, countrywide shutdowns, and kind of played that by ear based off of what they were seeing and what was happening over there. So I was like, ooh, all right, well, I can imagine that we are going to go into lockdown soonish. Um, so it's kind of crazy. And it was just a weird time too, because it was like, all right, he's gonna announce it, and I'm gonna be in the middle of like moving or something. Because that was when my lease ended on my other place, and I was trying to figure out what that looked like and whatnot. So, that it ended up being the case. The week that I was moving is when they announced the stay-at-home order, and I was like, oh, great, cool. Um, but yeah, it's just weird because like I think going into it, yeah, it was the 2-week stay at home thing just to kind of, try to nip it a little bit and try to, you know, keep the spread of the virus down so we didn't see it just go climb, just, escalate 0 to 100 real quick. Although it ended up doing that anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just funny to think about that it's been a full year since that's happened, and then just today, which is March 22nd, when we're recording this, today started the opening of the phase 3 in the Washington healthy Washington, whatever it's called, plan, um, which honestly was brought up in to where it's in fruition now because a lot of businesses complained, to our government and whatnot, just because it was so wishy-washy with how things were going. Like, oh, we did a for sure stay-at-home thing, 2 weeks. Everyone goes home, everything shuts down. The only thing that are going to be open are grocery stores, the essential stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we got into toilet paper wars and all the stuff and the crazy times. So you saw the slow of the spread when it first started. Then, you know, as we kind of kept going into the two, it got extended by a week, got extended by a couple of weeks. It just kind of kept getting extended. Um, and then things started to slowly open back up, just because, businesses at that point were like, we can't stay closed. A lot of them had to close. We saw a lot of like our favorite locations having to shut down permanently because of the pandemic, and they just didn't think they would recover financially, which is sad. But it's the ultimate truth of how this is all going as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of got into that, and then they were like, "Oh, well, if we make it to summer and it's still here, it'll die because of hot weather." Which for us up here in Washington, in March it's still cold, rainy, windy, just because
Mm-hmm.
spring and whatnot. But us up in Washington are also thinking like, will the heat actually kill it? Because it's going rampant in Arizona right now, and it's still hot down there.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
I don't know what you guys are talking about. Or I don't think you guys know what you're talking about with the hot
yeah,
weather killing it. Um, and then as we got into summer, like obviously it didn't go away. It got worse just because people were trying to go outside and do all these things. and it just kind of got worse, and then it finally slowed down toward the end. And then at least for us in Washington, it got so bad at smoke wise in August, September time, it just kind of forced everybody back inside, just because no one wanted to be breathing in smoke from all the forest fires and whatnot.
Right,
Uh,
right,
so we actually saw a decrease in slow the spread again during that time, just because everyone was inside.
right,
But we were inside for a different reason this time. We were like, oh, it's like medically unsafe to go outside. The anything above 300 on the air purity scale outside is horrible, and we were at like
right.
600 or something, and I was like, okay, don't do that. um, and then things started opening back up, and then opening closing, and I think businesses obviously had to do what they had to do. Some actually just stayed open during the pandemic, and they took the fine every day because it would actually be less getting hit with the fine than it would be to close permanently or
Hmm.
close its doors and not make any money per day, kind of thing, which I thought was interesting. And then I heard this the other day, actually. Like, obviously, we're opening back up to 50% capacity in most businesses at this point.
Right.
But obviously, with social distancing and masks and everything. And now there's this study like, oh, you can actually only be 3 feet away from people instead of 6. I'm like, I'm good. I know you're doing your research, but I'm going to stay at least 6 feet back. I still don't trust it. I'm still wearing my mask.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
but I digress in that. So I heard this story the other day. Um, and this guy was telling me, he's like, yeah, we went out to grab dinner for the first time really since the pandemic started. And actually at a sit down restaurant, because we were like, okay, well, let's try, they're sitting at 25% capacity or whatever.
Hmm.
So, let's do it. We'll probably, end up sitting outside because it was whatever. Um, and then, they went there, and he was telling me that it looked like they were completely full in the restaurant.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was crazy because then he was like, what the heck? You guys look like you're pretty much full. Aren't you supposed to be at 25%? And the person at the restaurant, I don't know if it was the wait staff or the manager,
Right.
but they were like, the governor and all that stuff, their mandate says 25% of capacity, not
Hmm.
25% of seating capacity. So I was like, oh, what the heck? So they like found a loophole in his saying or whatever.
Right.
Uh, and because he was like, see that number up there,
Yeah.
which
Yeah. Yeah.
is the maximum occupancy of like standing room only. They took
Yeah.
25% of that, which
Yeah. Yeah.
basically filled in all of their tables
Right.
at that point. And he was just like, I don't know if I want to eat here right now. Like,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a little sketchy. Um,
So do you feel like a lot of people are itching to kind of get back to, you know, times before the pandemic, or do you feel like it's just business trying to take whatever they can to get their money lost back?
I think it's a little bit of both, honestly. People have been itching this entire time. I mean, if you go back and listen to our episodes and whatnot, even we are like, we're just itching to go out, do an
Hmm.
adventure or something that's spontaneous trip, just random places, um, and just getting out and doing something spontaneous, and just being like that type of day or trip or whatever it might be. And I think we all missed that back then, and that was summer, early fall, where we were just itching to get out of the house.
Right, right.
So I think, people are obviously itching to get back out there. And I think businesses, yes, they're itching to get open, but at the same time, I think, like you just said, they're also trying to find these loopholes and
Hmm.
doing
Hmm.
all the things that they can to stay in business. Like, do
Right,
I
right.
fault them? No, I don't fault them because they're just trying to make their money like everybody else.
Right,
Do I think it was, is the right thing? I don't know. I mean, technically, if there's a loophole there and you exploit it, I mean, that's,
right, right,
nothing
right. And
on until someone catches you, kind of thing. So,
right, right.
Um, so yeah, he was exploiting the loophole there. Um,
Yeah.
but businesses got to make money in order to
Yeah.
survive
Yeah.
too. So like I said, I don't fault them for it, but it was just I feel like it's a little weird.
Right. I remember. I remember early in the pandemic, we were having all sorts of fun topics we are discussing. Just about the of just life during COVID-19 pandemic, and I remember one quote from one of our guests at the time. We're talking about, you know, we have to check our privilege because people were getting laid off and or furloughed or just straight up losing their jobs left and right. And for most of us, especially with our friends, um, either we were lucky to be laid off but still paid laid off, or we were still lucky to be one of the few privileged to have a full-time job still, but just with the ability to literally just wake up and work from home. And and for us too, we were definitely one of those. So kind of to shift gears a little bit, and get a little more personal, it definitely you know we both had no slowdown, and if anything, it seemed like life was normal outside of um, changing up the cultural norm of going out in public, but it seemed like we were able to kind of do things still normally, as if the world didn't feel like it was crashing down. How do you feel about that? Like, talk me through like how you feel about a year later, how lucky you felt, or maybe just how humbled you felt, or just kind of overall, like we were literally lucky while the world was burning down around us,
Hmm.
um, just kind of walk me through now that you experience a whole bunch of stuff, seen a bunch of stuff, a year later now, and we're still kind of in it, but still rolling just fine. Tell me how you feel about it all.
Yeah, I think being fortunate enough to have a job through the entire pandemic, till this point, honestly, obviously blessed that has happened. There was a lot of days where just because I'm in a certain industry that got hit really hard with the pandemic, which was gathering of people. So the fact that I was able to hold my job and not get furloughed or laid off or whatever it might be, obviously I'm very thankful for that. I'm not complaining at all. I think a lot of times that during the day or during the week or whatever, I might complain about my work just because um, this is just something completely different, non-related to just the job itself. It's well to the job, but I might be complaining about work. Granted, I don't take it for granted one second that I was able to work through the entire pandemic and not have to deal with unemployment or anything like that. I think my biggest thing was that I could have been used in a different way at work,
Mm,
rather than like obviously it was busy at first, trying to figure things out, but then there was a period of time where it just felt like I couldn't do anything at work. It was just like twiddling your thumbs, waiting for responses or whatever. Um, so like right now, obviously it's starting to pick back up a little bit, moving into phase three. See how that goes. Technically, I don't think even the university like supposed to have anything until phase four, but
mhm.
that's digging into the weeds a little bit. So work's going to be start picking up a little bit sooner, just to kind of understand like all the different things that are going to be happening. But there was a lot of times where like there was just not much to do. It was just like, all right, well, I'm going to go. Found myself sitting there not doing anything, which is frustrating for me because I like
Mhm.
to do things. I like to be busy. Um, in the middle of the summer when there was nothing happening and we were basically in that lockdown period, I just when there was nothing to do at work. I'd finished everything. It's like, all right, here's your projects. I'm like, okay, well, if you want me to do this in a timely manner, I can literally get this 2-week project done in a day and a half. Or you can have me spread it out over a course of 2 weeks. And they're like, yeah, obviously they're like, yeah, just make it seem like you're doing something during that time kind of thing. Um, you know, this is one of those things. It's a weird time, honestly, just because I felt it felt weird in that regard, because there was some days where granted, most of my days were kind of filled with something work related, but there was definitely some days where that we just didn't have anything to do. And I felt bad for the people that, literally got laid off or they were furloughed at businesses that could have been doing something. And I was just sitting here twiddling my thumbs, looking for something to do at work, but getting paid for it, kind of thing.
Right, right.
So in that regard, yes, blessed, thankful. I'm not complaining about it one bit. I just wish I would have been more busy,
Right. It seemed like it was, less of you, obviously, less of your bosses, and maybe overall less of your job. It was more of, in a bigger picture, this was kind of the economy and how it was affected by COVID, that most jobs, even though they were lucky enough during that time to continue to pay out their employees without cutting losses, however, they weren't prepared that, this lockdown was going to happen so long. So it's like, all right, how do we adjust to the times? But how we adjust is a huge adjustment, because do you adjust for preparing for something like this to extend, even though we can't predict? You know, in hindsight, we couldn't predict that it was going to last this long. So do we change our model to adapt to this new way? Mm-hmm. Or do we keep the hope that things are just going to go back to normal, the next week? But then in hindsight, we kept saying it's going to be fine the next week or the next month. We're only it's shortly there. We're going to be fine, until it's a year later. And it's like, well, we're still lucky that we could still pay out with no losses. However, we need to change the way we do things, because it seems like what you were saying is you love your job and you're fortunate that you were still able to stay strong. And however, during the pandemic, adaptation to the pandemic didn't pan out for your particular job. So it didn't feel fulfilling, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just one of those things. There was just a lot there that was, I felt like I wasn't needed, it feels weird to say that, but it was just like, I don't know, like someone else could have been working and, granted, obviously I understand like completely different business than like someone who got laid off at a different business, couldn't sustain it or whatever. But yeah, I just felt like, it was just the use of my time wasn't the best in what they could have had me doing. There was a lot of, political things behind it, but I won't get into those weeds either.
Right.
Because, it was, do the work and then they're like, oh, don't do that. Someone else is doing that. I'm like, okay, cool.
Right.
Like, all right, well, what do you want me to do? Because, in similar situations of things across the country for like my type of work, the people in my position, basically, they got recruited by their employer at that point to do other things. Their landscape of their job like changed completely, and they needed to be elsewhere helping with other things where it's very common in my position across the country for that to happen. But for me, it wasn't happening. So it was like, all right, I mean, not complaining that I'm not busy, but at the same time, I'm complaining that I'm not busy, kind of thing. Right. So yeah, I just wanted to feel like I was worth something at this point. Like I'm just like, all right, I'm doing work, but it's not changing lives out here. Granted, day-to-day life in work wasn't changing lives, but you know what I mean.
No, I get what you mean. Yeah, man. I mean, it's kind of the thing. And other jobs where other businesses were fortunate enough to adapt to the changing times. Another business took a lot longer, because of the infrastructure. For example, in my job, most of our work was done online anyways, except that, we just had a physical office for guests and clients to come through. But so when the pandemic hit, we were prepared and ready to just lift off and take everything online, and overall, even a year later, I feel like there's still some equity issues, because we're a company that supports all types of income groups of people, but going online, you really see the disparity of like lower income. And, this is for schools and everything too. You see people who have lack to internet access or lack of this. And so part of our job, there's definitely an equity part of it, but that I won't go into. But overall, you start to see that, you know, like Zoom, right? We're on Zoom. They thrive tremendously, in online stuff. So it's just one of those things. Some people adapted and some people didn't, or some people is realizing it slowly and now adapting. And this goes beyond businesses too. I think this is definitely for humans, us, people mindset too. A lot of us probably assume that things will get back to normal. In hindsight, we should have just changed our ways immediately, but we don't know how this, we don't even, I mean, even now we don't know the extent of its origins, for the most part, of how this virus came to be. And so there's still a lot of questions even a year later. And so let's switch gears again and let's kind of drive it home. So like you said, you work for a university, it's spring break. We're hearing great news out in Miami, who just declared a statewide emergency, or state of emergency, because of spring breakers traveling from who knows where, from all over the place, is causing you know havoc throughout the city.
Mm.
And as we know, this was kind of it's kind of history repeats itself, right? You remember when the pandemic, before it first started, guess what? It started around Miami too.
Yeah.
And the fear was that, again, we're not going to go into the politics of it, or anything of it. We're just stating what the facts that we see in the news. And so we have no opinion whatsoever about it, yet. But as of now, I'm just kind of reporting that it was funny because it seemed like Miami was headlining the news when the pandemic first started last year in 2020, spring breakers again.
Hmm.
And now a year later, when things still haven't shapen up, our lives have flipped upside down, and spring breakers are doing it again. Let's take it home now. What have you learned so far of how we survived this pandemic, with our family and friends and just our community in general, and seeing this news now? What's your expectations of the future, right, from this point? Because it's scary, because you could, like we said, it's a common thing that history repeats itself, and history is at the beginning again. Spring breakers in Miami. Now, I'm not saying it's just Miami, and I'm not saying it's just all college students in general,
Mm.
but it's just a correlation. Correlation doesn't always mean causation, but I'm just saying that there's something there.
Yeah.
So, Tyler, with all we've been through in a year, and now back to square one, it looks like, of when it all started. What's your expectations, going to the end of this year?
Yeah. No. I think, for what it's worth, yeah, obviously things kind of happen in cycles. You think about the Spanish flu pandemic back in the early 1900s, and you saw that last 2 years, 3 years, because everything got vaccinated at that point, or medicine and everything kind of advanced a little bit to where it went away. Similar situation. Obviously, we're a year into it now. We have the vaccine coming out. Well, it's been out for a little bit now, but it's becoming more available for everybody. Obviously, they're kind of doing it in phases and waves to get people the vaccines. But what did what did he say? By May 1st or June 1st, everyone in the United States should be able to get vaccinated or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
President speaking, of course, but
Mm-hmm.
we're well on track to do that. So it's one of those things like, even with people getting vaccinated, and if everyone does get vaccinated, obviously we know not everyone's going to get vaccinated. Either they don't want to, they're against it, or it's a religious thing. Obviously, we won't get into the weeds in that, but it's one of those things. I think if we look at it holistically, people are going to get vaccinated. Still think it's going to be an issue just because this vaccination, while great, with new strands kind of popping up too, like that's just the thing. It's always the battle of who has the step up. Will the virus have a step up on the vaccine? Will the vaccine have a step up on the virus? I mean, you see it every year with flu shots. That's why people get flu shots every year, because you know the flu virus, it adapts to the shot, and it evolves into something different. So it's one of those things. The vaccine will definitely help, I think, slow everything down a little bit, to where we can all, meet up safely. Obviously, we would still probably wear masks and everything, but I don't think that's going away anytime soon. Masks will probably be at least until next year. At this point, I'm going to say that while things slow down, I think we'll try to get back to a little bit of normalcy pre-pandemic, or as someone said today, BC, which, before COVID. Um, Getting back to that point, I think, is obviously the ideal situation. But I think we're going to be in masks. I think we're going to be doing all that stuff for at least another year. If we've learned anything from the past, these things, 2 years is usually when it starts to slow down. So we'll probably see that. We'll probably deal with this until the end of the year, and then hopefully by next year things start to just like fully like, okay, we're on the up and up from this. People are still probably going to wear masks when they go outside, but I think that's also going to be a personal preference. I don't think it will be weird anymore. Americans always thought it was weird that Asian countries wore masks everywhere, and it's like, well, look at that. So now it's like, um, kind of a normalcy over here now, like people just wearing masks. So I
Mm-hmm.
think, for what it is, I think we're still going to be in this next year, beginning of 2022, just because things like spring break, summer vacation, certain holidays, July 4th, all of those things, you're going to see everyone gathering, and if people aren't vaccinated, spreading will happen, just stuff like that. I think it's still going to happen. There's still going to be little small outbreaks. I hope they're not big ones, obviously, but
Right, right.
I'm hoping the vaccination slows a lot of those down, but still some slip past. So we'll see. We'll see. I think we're heading in the right direction for sure. But I think we'll still be seeing the effects of this through the end of the year, at least. I don't think it's something that's going to go away in 9 months. I think, maybe next March, a year from today, maybe even,
Yeah,
we'll be
yeah.
having another conversation like, oh, hey, we're 2 years into this thing, and we're almost out, hopefully.
Right, right, right.
So yeah, I think that's just how it's going to go. Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, you said it. You said it right on. I don't think I have any more to add. Well, at least for the time we have allotted. But yeah, no, I think thank you for your opinion on that. I think we're just gonna wrap it up here, and who knows? Maybe next week or a couple weeks, or maybe a month from now, we'll have an episode recapping what we discussed here and what major changes may have happened a month from now. It's so unknown still. I think let's go back to your first word that you said when you first answered this question. at the when we all first started, you mentioned it still feels surreal. And I think I said the same thing to a coworker earlier today, where it's like, man, um, first of all, 2021, it seems like it's going by quickly. We're already in March, and it seems like it's just flying. Maybe it's because of that surrealness where it seems like we're still stuck in March of 2020, right? Um, us being big sports fans, like you and I and my coworker, we were just talking a little bit about like, yeah, we didn't even realize March Madness started until we saw news of like, the big Ohio State upset and blah, blah, blah. Right.
Right.
It's like, whoa, it's like, yeah, I didn't even realize or paid attention. And so it's all part of that surrealness that it's just like, man, we're all just still trying to survive. We're all still trying to just hang in there and try to come to terms with reality of like, all right, we're getting bombarded with all these news. What's real? What's not? And so it's kind of hard. We're all kind of still in this together. So appreciate you for that. And as always, we thank you, our listeners. We're wrapping it up tonight. Thank you again. This is Real Talk by Our Stories, Your Legacy. And so, again, as we always cap it off, we always hope that you guys reach out to us, give us some feedback, give us some questions or some other things you would like for us to share our opinions and thoughts on. And as always, even if you don't, we hope that you take this same question and you reflect upon it with yourself, or talk about it with your friends and your family, and just check in with each other and see how we're all doing and how we're all adapting still in these still crazy times. So signing off. Thank you again. We'll see y'all next week. This is Our Stories, Your Legacy.
See ya.